Welcome, everybody. It's great to see all of you, and I want to let you know that compassionate communication, which we're going to share, has been played a profound effect in my life. My name is Lori Grace, and I've been involved as a teacher and student and teacher, which is where I think all of life is, continual learning, since 1999. So, and do you want to share?
Sure. So my name is Rich Davidson. Delighted to be here with you. Have also been involved either in studying, learning, or teaching, and still studying and learning compassionate communication. And just for clarity, some of you might be familiar with or have heard of nonviolent communication, which was created by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. This is exactly the same thing, where the request has just been to use the term compassionate communication. Marshall himself has actually said he sort of wishes he had named it that right from the start. So it's the same model and the same work, and we're very beholden to him and the work that he's done, and really grateful and honored to have the opportunity to share it with you. Just before we move on, is there anyone who has not gotten one of these handouts? And why don't you just come up and get one, or maybe Fred, here you go, take one of those. Here, I'll just give you a bunch, Fred, and if anyone else needs, thank you. And we'll be referring to this during our session today.
Yeah. And we'll be having a raffle, as I understand it, at the end of the class.
Yes, actually, everyone who attends will, two things. At the end of the session, everyone will get a coupon. We're from Sunrise Center in Corte Madera. It's a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit that provides a variety of different topics and sessions and classes, certainly in compassionate communication, as you can imagine, green living, health and wellness, social activist issues, like that. And so
near-death experiences.
Oh,
too.
yes, the third Friday of the month we have a near-death speaker. And we're going to give everyone at the end of the session a coupon good for a free class at Sunrise Center sometime, at your convenience. We'll also give everyone a little form to fill out. And if you hand it back in to us, we'll do a drawing here at the expo for an opportunity to win a 3-day, 2-night stay at Haleakua Garden Farm in Maui, which is Lori's beautiful eco retreat and conference center and bed and breakfast.
And we have some brochures also.
Yeah.
If you don't win, you might still like to come sometime, because we're also a certified organic farm.
So anyone who here is already familiar with or has had some exposure to or training in either NVC, compassionate communication? Fantastic. Okay. Who has never heard of it before or has no real awareness of it? Okay. And is there anybody who's not sure? All right, a couple. All right, wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're delighted that you're here and delighted to have the opportunity to share it with you.
Okay. So should we?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a scene of an issue, which is that I'm coming into a room and I'm finding it very messy in my view, and I'm
Just go for it.
all right.
Just go for
Okay. Well, we're going to do it in one way, and then which has much more of a judgmental feel to it, and then we're going to do it in the way using compassionate communication, and then break it down for a moment so you can see the differences in how the conversation resolves. Okay, so it's at night, and we're a couple, let's say, and I'm coming in, and I'm seeing the place is like really a mess. Okay, so here we go. Oh my God, I've had a tiring day. Rich, place looks like a pigsty. What are you doing here? What's this? What's this going on? Oh my God, this is the last thing I needed to experience coming back from work. Oh,
I don't even get a hello. All I get is this place is a mess,
I'm
and it's
just
not a mess.
appalled.
There's a couple things lying around. Get
I'm
off my case
appalled.
already. You know, you're so always every time coming in criticizing and making me wrong. I'm sitting here reading my book, and you have to mess with me. You can't even say hello.
I don't think you can understand how upset I could feel coming in and seeing all this crap.
No,
everywhere.
I can't. I mean, it's not that big a deal. Why you're so upset, I don't understand. But give me a break. I don't really want to deal with this again. It happens all the time. Just forget it.
Oh, God. I'm feeling really upset right now, and I'm just seeing this, and this is so much what I did not want to see coming back. My job is so complicated. I just needed some freshness, some cleanliness, order. Oh, my God. But how I communicated with him wasn't very skillful. So I know that I'm feeling some pain right now because I actually really love this guy, and I don't know quite how to express myself right now. And he's gone off, and I wonder how he must be feeling. Well, I'm imagining he's clearly feeling upset, and he would have really liked to feel acknowledged, and I'm guessing maybe he'd like to feel understood. You know, maybe he'd like to have some understanding for what was going on with him. I mean, I certainly didn't show that. Oh, God. I'd like to find a way to resolve this because it hurts in my heart when we fight, and I guess I do see my part in it. Oh, God. So I think I'm going to go over to him and talk to him and try and reach out. Rich.
What?
Can I interrupt a moment? I want you to know I don't feel how I talked to you was very skillful.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It really sucked.
Yeah. I'm guessing you feel like angry and you'd really like to have been heard or understood. You would have liked to experience that.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to be understood. You just came in here, started criticizing me.
Yeah, that's true. And I remember hearing you say, not even a hello.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, I want you to know I can really imagine that I might feel that way too.
Yeah, I bet you would.
And that I would really like to be greeted before, however I kept the room was kept. And I'm guessing you would have really liked some understanding, some warmth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
Well,
you're always criticizing me. It's always about petty things too.
So you're feeling some pain right now, and you're remembering other criticisms even.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'd like to try and start a new leaf. I took this class in compassion communication, and I want to just feel into what's going on, and I hear you're upset and you'd really like some recognition. Can I just touch you?
Sure,
okay. Sure. And I guess with all this stuff here, you would really like to maybe have me understand why the stuff is all here or something. I don't know.
I don't think it's all that much stuff.
Oh, okay. So you'd like me to see it that way. Well, all right. So I see what I did, and I apologize for my part in this.
Okay, thank you.
But what I would also like to ask is, I'd like to have some empathy, actually, for my own role. Remember we studied that, Could you give me some?
I'm not sure I'm there yet.
All right.
However,
I will
dig deep. I will dig deep. And let me just first let me just check in with myself here. And so, all right, I'm really annoyed that Lori came in. So this was something that she did for herself. I might do for myself inside, a little internal conversation, and just go, oh, I didn't like it when she came in and started what felt like criticism to me, and complaining and making it really seemed like she was making me wrong. And so, all right, so that's I would have really liked a different kind of communication. So that's what I wished I'd had. And I know this has come up before, so this is a dynamic between us, and maybe I can look more at, my experience of orderliness and her experience of orderliness, and see if we can come to some matching place. And she is trying right now. She really is. She made a shift. So my intention is connection. My intention is to really have our relationship work. So that's really all I need right now, to just soften a little bit myself, and I can come back to Lori and say, all right, so thank you for acknowledging that. And I'm imagining when you came in and saw the room that you characterized as a mess, that was really disappointing for you.
Well, I actually felt overwhelmed. That's what happened, but thank you for guessing on that. And I felt disappointed to some degree. I just was like, aha. And I agree that it's not how I'd like to be, and then I just reacted to you.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
for saying that.
Yeah.
So you were feeling overwhelmed because you so value some sense of order
Yeah.
and neatness. And,
Yeah, that's right.
And a place to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has happened before, and I just felt so stressed, tired, overwhelmed, and then I just wanted to feel some clarity, some peace.
Sure,
in
I
the
can
home,
understand
and
that.
then I saw this, and I apologize. I mean, I used very judgmental terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that.
Sorry again.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk later about some way we can come to some better understanding of what's important to you about how the house looks, and what's important to me, and see if we can come to some agreement that works for both of us. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
Definitely, we can talk. And just to put in one little bit right now, when I walk in, I really don't want to be that impulsive again. I want to take a few moments, whatever I do,
Okay.
just to simmer down and to slow down, and to empathize with myself, and to stay out of these judgmental terms, like pigsty. And
Thank you. I would feel better.
not to remind you again.
All right.
But
Thank you. All right. So let's go have dinner.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
All right.
So what we were doing, and we'll address your question in just a moment. What we were doing in this whole scene is I was initially coming out with a lot of judgments and basically what's known as attack. And then when I felt sad when he went away, I did something which I really, really do in my life, and I found it very useful, is I give myself empathy. I ask myself, what am I feeling and what am I wanting? And clarity. And in NBC, we use very general needs. So I just needed order and space and some cleanliness, clarity, these kinds of things. And then I took, when I wanted to create connection with Rich, I took time to imagine how he might be feeling, that he wanted to have some acknowledgement, some caring. That's what I imagined. And then I came to him both sharing my regret for how I'd acted and then seeking to reach out to him. Okay, so that's the part that I did. And do you want to say what you did? Or?
Well, I imagine, at least in my life, I have some familiarity with the first part of the scenario of someone saying something to me that I hear as criticism, and have that sense of thinking I'm being attacked or made wrong, and I get defensive and I react back to that. And so obviously, with compassionate communication, we're wanting to shift that and get away from judgment and evaluation and express what we see and what feelings we're having and what needs are not being met. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And so when Lori came back to me after she had given herself some empathy and softened, it opened the space for me to look inside and notice what was going on for me. And I gave myself empathy out loud to you. And I guess part of I want to step back for a moment. And for me, the umbrella for this work, for compassionate communication, it's really about connection. That's the core of it for me. It's about making connection first with myself and then with the other person. And as I said out loud, when I was giving empathy, I said, I really want to connect. If that's the underlying principle, and that's really what I want to, what my behavior is about, it helps me to soften, because the more that we're like this with each other is not really connecting. And so that Lori was willing to make the first entree to soften and say, let's talk about this in a different way, allowed me to do the same thing with her, because it's really about how can we come together and how can we find something that meets both our needs. And then when Lori asked me to give her empathy, the truth was, in the role, I wasn't really ready to give her empathy yet. I wasn't there yet. And so that was genuine for me. And that's when I gave myself empathy first. And that may happen for you in a situation where if you're not really ready to make that connection there, make the connection within yourself. And that's what I did. And I allowed myself to just sort of commiserate with myself for a moment, saying, this isn't really going the way I'd like. This is not what I want. Take a breath. And Lori's reaching out, and let me reach out back. Instead of escalating, let's de-escalate. And then I was able to genuinely connect with her and give her some empathy.
Yeah, and in life, Rich, might have said, look, I need a few more moments now, and given himself that, even not with me present, and then come back to me. And I myself have done that. There's a great value to a timeout, but to really know how to use a timeout most effectively, it's in giving ourselves empathy and imagining what the other person might be feeling. So this has been profoundly remarkable in my life all the time when I practice it. And of course I fall into something else periodically, but I find that the number of times has gone down and down. So.
There was a question, I think Lori saw somebody's hand before. Yeah.
Touch. Oh, touch, thank you. Yeah, just on the shoulder. Mm-hmm. He said on the shoulder.
I guess it's the distance in the room, but I wasn't.
Oh, sorry about that. Mm-hmm.
All right. I was just going to ask you guys if you could model, and thank you for what you're doing, by the way. I just left Ken and Corinne Kaufman's thing, and they just said something that you guys said that's important in conflict resolution. Like take your time if you're both pissed off at each other. Maybe you need to go to different rooms of the house, or one goes for a walk, and that's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for reminding me on that one. And then model a situation where one word that the other person says, whether it's you to him or he says something, is really tripping your trigger. How you might react in the moment with something like that happening?
Do you mean what would I use to mellow myself out before talking to him? Is that?
Yeah, or what you would say to him if it's you that's having the reaction.
If I have a reaction like that, I might say, I need some time to figure this out. I don't know how to respond. And then I would take a walk, really. I take walks. And sometimes I called a friend, but I take walks first, and then I usually call a friend.
One thing I would add to that, if you're going to take a timeout, for me, I think it's helpful to let your partner know, I need a timeout or I need to take a walk and I will be back.
Exactly.
And we can continue talking about this. So it's not like I'm leaving or I'm leaving you hanging,
Right.
but I'm doing this in service so I can be more present in having our conversation.
Yeah, and I'm thank you for bringing that piece up. Yeah.
Were there any other questions about what you saw or? Yes.
I think because you two are such nice people, that was a very controlled interaction. As far as the negative, the first part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing about having a timeout, there was another thing. Okay, so what if one person's more verbal than the other one? Like the other one, their MO is to like just be quiet. Which is, how would that work out? And then the other thing is, what if one person needs a timeout, the other person doesn't? And then
So those are all very good questions.
Do me a favor, just because I think that's being taped, repeat the core of the questions. Repeat it with the microphone, if you would.
Well, one of the questions I heard is wonder if one of the people is more verbal than the other, and has a hard time looking into themselves and accessing these things in words. And the other one was, which was the
If
other
one
one?
person wants the timeout and the other person
Right.
doesn't.
The one wants the timeout and the other doesn't. So when I'm with somebody who's less verbal, one of the things that I do is I spend more time imagining and guessing how they might feel and what they might need. Well, it helps because a person can feel cared about. Yeah, but they still end up feeling cared about because I'm spending time trying to feel into what they want. And in the case of, and Rich may have other answers to this, and in the case of somebody who doesn't want to time out, and I do, I think I would speak like Rich said. I really don't want to get into an attacking mode here, and I really need a break for a few minutes. I know I see you don't, but I'm just feeling really uncomfortable, and I'd like to be back in 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. So what would you say, or what?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Really, I mean, just say, I guess actually what I would say, if someone, the other person wanted to say, I really need this, would that be okay with you if I did that? I would, and see if we can do what might need to happen to negotiate that or say, this is really important. I really want to be present for you. I'm just not able to do it right now. I promise I'll be back. Can I take 5 minutes or can I take whatever? And is that okay with you, or can you manage that, or something like that, to rather than just make a declarative statement. It's going to happen. I want it, so it's got to happen.
So when I say what I've observed is when, kind of like what Rich is saying, if I really emphasize, I really want to hear you, and I really want to understand you. Right now I'm filled with so much pain inside myself, I will not be able to listen to you effectively, and I don't want to waste your time and mine. Something like that. And I do observe that people like to be heard. So
one other possibility, if it's that much tension and that heavily, no, we've got to talk now. In my best moment, I might give myself some of that empathy and say, okay, this person is expressing a need that's so great. Can I, is my need so great that I have to leave, or can I actually turn it around and give this person some empathy? And we'll talk a little more about this at the end, so I don't want to get into it right now, but that person's saying no, there's something they're saying yes to inside themselves. There's some need that's important for them they're wanting to fulfill by continuing the conversation, even in the light of my saying, it's hard for me to do it. So I would maybe explore that with them a little bit and see if we can give them a little attention, a little saying, okay, this isn't just about me. I know this is about you as well. And let's explore it a little bit and then see if we can go back to saying it would be, can you manage to have me go? Or maybe give up going and saying, okay, I'll do my best. That's off the, without belaboring it, that would be another option.
So these are all good possibilities. Yes.
I like the part where you said, I'm guessing that you're feeling this way or you're thinking this way about something. And what would you do in a situation where the person is telling you that you're doing something because you're doing it because of this or that, and when really they're like just totally off. They're like saying things about you that are not true, or they're trying to say you're thinking about or feeling things that are not true.
So what
Response for that.
if somebody's responding to me with this analysis, basically, that's how I'm hearing you, is that right? Of what's motivating me, I will probably reflect what I heard you say is that you imagine and sense that I'm doing X for Y and Y, for these reasons. And I can also say at some point, I don't agree, and I'm hearing that that's how your belief, or I may just hear them and not go any further, depending on how open they are. So I find it's not really valuable to respond to analyses. I don't. It gets me in my head, the other person's in their head, imagining reasons. And I seek to go deeper for underlying needs and values and what they want. And speaking of that, I'd like to shift gears. Should we? I'd like to shift gears to introduce you to our manual that we put out for you.
Anybody who didn't get one, let's see if we have. Oh.
So maybe Fred, you can pass
I think
these
Fred
out.
are they all gone? Okay. So who doesn't have one?
If you could move close to share something.
Just share. If you're here with a partner and would be willing to share with your partner and give one up to somebody else, that would be appreciated. It's not required. And if not, just get chummy, sit next to somebody and share if you would.
And
does anybody need one? This woman is offering. Thank you so much. Thank you, Fred.
so what I would like to say is, do you need one over here? Well, no, the hand went down. So basically, nonviolent communication is based on needs and values. Like I had a need for clarity and space and order. He had a need for warmth and connection and understanding, okay? All of these needs, when you state them in really general terms, are things every one of us have had a need for. Raise your hand if you've never felt a need for clarity and order. Or raise your hand if you've never felt a need for warmth and understanding. See, we all have these needs, all right? So one of the beautiful gifts of nonviolent communication was that we use expressing needs to help another in a very general way, to help another person empathize with our need, okay? And the strategy to meet that need might be very different with different people. It's like one person might like understanding from me, really listening to Rich, or another person might want warmth by getting a big hug first, or any number of things. The strategies are come from different places, but if we can go to that place of the universal need, then the other person is more likely to hear us. And this is so effective that 2 board members went to a refugee camp in Afghanistan and worked with warlords for 3 days who had been on opposite sides and killed each other's children. And through empathizing, they were able to come to a place of peace. I can share more, but we can also. What do you think? Should I mention how they came to the peace? I might as well. Yeah. So basically, these 2 board members from Compassionate Communication went over to Kabul. There were all these warlords, and they were on different sides. Thank you. Good point. And they were saying, on one side, you killed my wife. This is terrible. Do you understand how painful this is. And, on the other side, well, you blasted my son's leg off with one of those bombs or machine gunned my other relatives and this kind of thing. And then basically they were really wanting peace and harmony. They wanted to see survival for their families. And then they recognized that both sides had the same needs, okay? And then they just sort of were quiet. And they were just there noticing this. And then on the third day of the 3 days, they started making strategies to learn to forgive and to come to a place where they could be in harmony and peace. And at the end of the third day, the head warlord, who had really been the most powerful figure and killed a lot of people, came up and said, we would have killed far fewer people had we known of this before. And they continued with a practice group in Kabul, in the refugee camp. So what's true for me is if there's a system that can help people resolve if something as horrible as having your family, parts of your family killed or maimed, then I felt my struggles, this system could easily help me deal with it. And so that was always inspirational to me. And Marshall went around the world to places that had practiced genocide and created healing. He's now retired, but...
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
I want to just tie in a little more. And there's a process, a 4-step process to all of this that we're going to talk about in a little while. So I'm not going to get into that right now, but obviously part of the process is identifying needs. And just to give a little more explanation or extension to what Lori's just been saying, what Marshall posited is that all of our behaviors, everything we do, are attempts to meet needs. Core, universal, beautiful, precious needs. As Lori was saying, a need that anybody at any time might have. And these needs are pretty much can be described in a single word. So and the feelings that we generate, feeling happy or sad, generally are generated from our needs being met or not met. And again, we'll talk a little more about that in a moment. So it just occurred to me while you were talking that in the exercise that Lori and I just did, or the role play we did a moment ago, one need that Lori expressed that she had was a need that she came in, feeling overwhelmed. What was the need behind that for you? Would one of those needs have been maybe a need for ease?
Clarity, order.
Order.
I can see straight.
Okay, but okay, and
clarity, order, I can see straight.
Okay, a need for clarity and order, and would comfort have been one of those needs?
It would have been comforting to have the clarity and order, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm getting at, there's some part of us that we each had a need that I think we actually had some of the same needs for maybe for clarity, maybe for a certain kind of order. I'm guessing there was a need for ease, for her, the ease of coming in.
Yes, ease. Yeah.
What?
Oh, I was just excited with what you said.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to concentrate on that part for a moment just to tie in what we were just talking about. We each had a need for ease. The strategy that we each had, my strategy was to leave things lying around. That was ease for me. Her need for ease, her strategy is to come back and find a place in her concept of order. All right? So we each had the same need, but we had different strategies, and that's why it's so important to connect with and understand what's my need, and I want to have my need met. But with compassionate communication, it's not enough for me to have my need met. I want to make sure your need is met as well. And so when we can clarify that, we can, as the example she just gave, it's not unusual for people in conflict, at least for some part of it, to discover they're trying to meet similar or the same needs. They just have different strategies for how they're going about doing it. And once we discover that, there's an opening to say, can we find a strategy that will meet the need for each of us, our need will be met for each other.
And to follow what you said, when there's an empathic understanding, I've learned to trust that understanding in terms of the solutions just bubbling up. And Marshall would sometimes choose, okay, what couple has been arguing about anything for the longest period of time? And I watched him resolve something with a man and wife who had argued about the same thing for 29 years. And it was through, and he said, it's when each person can have empathy with the other person's needs. And what happens is that the solution is not necessarily person A or person B. It's something that evolves creatively from the empathic understanding. Okay. Yeah. So with that, we'd like to introduce you to our needs page. Do you know what page that is? We don't
I think
have
it might be page 4 or 5. Does anybody tell me which? 4. Page 4.
Okay.
So this is not, of course, an exhaustive list, but it actually page 4 and 5. It's back to back. So one. I'm sorry. It's the feelings that are 2 pages.
Yeah, the needs, right?
Yeah.
As well. Can everyone find a page on needs?
Page 4.
Page 4. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is choose somebody, could be someone right next to you or nearby. You don't have to even know them.
You're right. If you need a handout to share with someone, raise your hand, or if and just want to, actually, why don't you just go sidle up to 2 or 1 or 2 people and share with them. If you're willing to have somebody come up and share with you, would you raise your hand? Here's somebody right up here, and there's somebody right over there. So just come on, change your seat, come on up. Thank you. Just wanted to know if someone's willing to have someone come share.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to look at these needs and find one need that you feel is being met right now, and one that is being met, that that you're receiving it right here at the expo, something that, or being here in this room. What need is this meeting? And then after that, I'd like you to notice inside yourself, is there any emotion that comes, any emotion or feeling that comes out of this need being met? So after you find a need that's being met, just notice, take a breath, and just notice what emotion you might happen to be feeling, noticing that this need is met. And then when you're aware of both of these things, I invite you to share them with your partner, with the person that you have found nearby. Yeah? No, not at all.
No. This is just to share, have somebody to share with. This is your own need that's being met for either being at the expo or being in the session. As you look at the page, what's a need that's being met for me right now? And for me right now, it's a need for a contribution. And this is just to share with somebody, 1 or 2 people.
And any emotions. Do you have enough time? Do anyone need more time? And if you have a question, you can ask it in a minute. Yeah, share it with your partner when you're aware of what need is being met and what feeling or emotion gets engendered as a result. Okay. So we'd like to give you 30 more seconds to wrap this up. Okay. So if you could complete this part, we'd like to have 2 or 3 people share any feeling, and I'll repeat it back so other people can hear. Any need that was met, and any emotion you noticed as a result of this need being met. Could someone raise their hand?
Sure.
Relating to the comfort of companionship.
Companionship, okay. And the emotion, if any, that you notice that comes when that need for companionship is met? Comfort, safety, and contentment. Thank you. Okay. And could we hear from another person? Yeah, Gary.
I'm feeling love. My need for love is being met.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm feeling affection. I'm feeling joy and affection.
So your need for love is being met, and you're feeling joy and affection. And okay, thank you. Shall we hear from another? Yes.
So the feeling I get when that need is filled is a lightness.
Uh-huh. Okay, very good. All right, so I'm noticing that all of you are identifying this, and this gets back to one really important fact, which we've said before, but we'll say one more time, is in nonviolent communication, our needs, whether they are met needs or unmet needs, generate our emotions. And what that also means is there's no way that you can make me feel angry. My anger is from an unmet need inside of myself, whether it's understanding or love or peace or harmony or any number of things. And so I find when I can really access my need that's generating my emotion that I'm feeling, whether angry or fearful or sad or happy or whatever, what happens is that is a language tool, in a sense, and a philosophy for helping me take responsibility for myself and my feelings. And it cuts blame like in one swoop. So that's what I wanted to share from that. So
why don't we go through the four-step model, or I actually like to think of it as a four-step process rather than a particular model of A, B, C, D. But it really is a process of that you might go through and connecting with yourself and connecting with another. So page 1, right after the cover page. Most of them I don't think has a number on it, but it's the very first page after the cover page.
okay, so when you look at the left-hand side, which is the one we're going to focus on right now, you'll see that there are guides to expressing yourself compassionately. And one of the first things that's really important is if I see something that's upsetting me, or actually even giving me joy, but if I see something, let's say, that's upsetting me, and I really want to be heard when I talk to this other person, I'm going to choose to say what I observe without judgment, just like I was looking through the eye of a video camera, okay? So when we were doing our demonstration, I came out and I called this place a pigsty. Now, when I walk into the house, there are not a group of pigs, in the earth there. That was a judgmental term that expresses my disgust and dismay, all right? So what I've learned to do is when I go into let's say a messy kitchen or something, I might say, when I see many dishes piled one after another in the sink, and when I see a cockroach moving across from one side of the sink to the other, when I say that, that's an observation. You could actually film it, okay? And that is easier for people to hear than when I walk and see this filthy mess, all right? So that's number one. So always think, how could we show it? How could I say it as though I was looking through the eye of a camera lens? So that's that one.
And the nuance of that actually is a video, what Lori's saying, what would a video camera capture? A video camera might capture me sitting in a chair, kind of slumped down a little bit, looking straight ahead. It would not catch me being lazy. And that's the difference. That's where we add the judgment or the evaluation. So the next thing that we want to express is, what feeling am I noticing inside myself? And again, it's like, so when Lori came in the room, had she used the compassionate communication? When I walk in, Rich, and I notice piles of clothing here and here and here and here on the floor and on the couch and on the chair, that's descriptive. There's no judgment about that. She's observing. Then she might say to me, and I notice I'm feeling overwhelmed, I think is something that she mentioned, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry, or disappointed, or whatever the feeling or feelings might happen to be. One of the things that's been really important for me in this work and clarifying is we often confuse our feelings with our thoughts. And anytime you have heard someone say, or maybe you've said yourself, and I hear it all the time on when I hear interviews on the radio, and anytime you hear, I feel that, we're not talking feelings, we're talking thoughts. Feelings are the emotions inside of, and the first, I think it's page 2 and 3, has 2 lists of feelings. And again, of course, they're not exhaustive, but they were really valuable for me to realize how my vocabulary of feelings, how inarticulate I was before I really looked at, the nuances of different kinds of feelings. And the first page are the feelings we might have when our needs are being met, and the second page are feelings we might have when our needs are not being met. And I want to also suggest that you may have also heard the phrase positive or negative feelings. And for me, there's nothing about a negative, no feelings are negative. There are comfortable and uncomfortable feelings, but there's nothing wrong with any feeling we have. In fact, feelings are wonderful because they give us an insight as to what's going on. And even anger or sadness or despair is really beautiful when we can identify it and then use it to do something with it for action or comfort or whatever is necessary. So the more you can be aware, let me back for a moment. The reason I think it's important to identify feelings separate from thoughts is, once again, when we're in a conversation with someone, it helps with clarity. That sense of, I feel like you don't love me anymore. All right? That's not a feeling, that's a thought. But the feelings, when we can get in touch with what are the feelings that are there, I feel sad, I feel scared, I feel nervous. Those feelings really help to, first for myself to identify, and then in sharing with the other person and communicating, this is what's really going on for me. The thought I have is that you don't love me anymore, whatever it may be.
Great. And then again, if you look on the next section down on page 1, you'll see needs. And what I've learned to do is, when I say an emotion that I'm having, and one of the ways I get into remembering emotions, I say angry, happy, sad, mad. I have my little idiom that I say. But when I access my emotion, I immediately dive into feeling, what am I needing or wanting in the general way? That's what needs are about, and that's what we've practiced here. And sometimes, like with my son, for instance, who I consider my master trainer, he's now adult, and he's really appreciated my work in compassion communication. I might have to say, and I want you to know this need is entirely generated inside of me, because he might hear me differently. He might still hear me as blame or attack, part of the sort of mother-son dynamics that are possible, especially when there are power differences. So anyway, so we did that exercise before, and I think we can go on to requests.
One just last bit I want to say about needs. We already did talk about where they come from. And again, as you may have said yourself or have had said to you in the past, when someone says to you, if Lori had said to me in that role play, so this is a mess and I need you to get up right now and clean, that was expressing her strategy, not expressing her need.
Right. Right.
And the other part about needs is people have a fear that, well, I don't want to be needy. I don't want to express, if I express my needs, somebody will think I'm needy. And so, again, which is a judgment, of course, in and of itself. But if we can really embrace that our needs are really beautiful and precious, and we all have them and might have the same need at any given time, then it's simply about expressing, taking care of myself and expressing who I am.
Right, and to follow what you just said, and we'll get to your question, I actually find that I get heard better generally if I don't use the word needs. I mean, needs are just to help us take it seriously, but if I use the words want or prefer. So.
Or value or long for or something like
yes,
that.
Yes, or value or long for.
There's sort
Thank
of
you.
What's kind of known as classic NVC or compassionate communication, which would be speaking exactly as you're seeing in the handout. And then there's more colloquial or street, which is just kind of saying the spirit of it without necessarily saying the specifics. And that sometimes that lack of formality is more comfortable for people, both in the speaking and the hearing. Did you have a question?
So in answer to that, for me, and Rich may have his own methods, what I would first say is I'm feeling insecure about sharing the feelings I want to share, because that's the first place, and I'm worried about being attacked, or I can go into it at more length, and then I notice how the other person reacts to that. If they're still interested, oh, no, please share with me how you're feeling. That's more encouraging. I would say I'm feeling insecure about sharing the feelings I want to share with you. I'm feeling worried that I'll be criticized or attacked, or, I can go on, and then I notice how that person responds. And then I evaluate if I'm going to go further.
Can I get a thought for that a little bit?
Yeah.
I make television programs and films about relationships. And one of the things that I learned from these experts and gurus like Chopra and Williamson, some of the people that I've had, is that in the process of creating intimacy with someone for the first time, non-sexual intimacy, I'm just talking about emotional intimacy. You're supposed to do this disclosure, and become vulnerable and things like that, be transparent, that help. And so I like to do that, but I had a woman rip me to shreds recently when doing that, because I don't think I used those words that you suggested. I tried to disclose things, when we cross that 50-year-old mark, things happen.
Okay.
So, do you have any advice on, like, when you're first getting to know somebody, when it might be too soon, or how to handle that or not?
Well, I would real, I have personally have a very strong value on transparency. And if I'm considering dating someone, I look if they resonate with that. And then I still would follow what you were suggesting. And if I'm feeling afraid of sharing, or if I come out, well, if I share some of what I'm dealing with, I have some fears that I'll be judged or that you'll lose interest in me in some way. And I watch how that person responds. And then I evaluate what do I want to do with this.
So if
Yeah.
the person is like not responding or not really liking or not taking in or just not maybe even talking, isn't that like, well, I don't know then about this person?
Well, I probably, if I said I'm feeling insecure about what I'm about to share, I would want to have a positive encouragement. If I feel that they're just saying, "All right, you're feeling insecure, yeah, okay." If I get an answer, if I get a response like that, I might just say, "Well, I'm not just feeling that comfortable right now, so I'm going to take some more time with whatever." But I really love people who are transparent. It really means a lot to me. So when I get that kind of encouragement or support for my vulnerability, I come forward. Yeah.
I think also that in any situation, you need to gauge the specific situation and the specific person and what it is you want to share and how big the risk is for yourself, and take care of yourself. If it's a risk, to look at something, well, if the worst thing happened that I could imagine, how bad would that be for me? Am I willing to take the risk or not? And if for whatever reason you're thinking you're so vulnerable that you couldn't hear the worst, then you may choose not to share it, or as Lori was saying, kind of slowly lead into it and see what kind of response you're getting from checking it out. Sometimes I think, at least for me in my life, sometimes if when I really think about it, the worst that'll happen is somebody, I won't get the response I want, but it really won't kill me, and it really won't be so terrible. And so, am I willing to take the risk for the possibility of opening things up? But it really, I think it depends on the situation and who the other person is and what your stake is, and if you're willing to, put your foot in the water a little bit. Let's just take these two, and then I want to finish with the model. So why don't you and then the gentleman.
Okay, I'm thinking of a family member, because you don't have a choice in that relationship. And the other person doesn't want to participate in compassionate communication. So do you go ahead and do your end of it and go through all the steps, whether or not they're,
Well, I'd really love to respond to that.
draw them in, maybe with the hope that maybe you could pull them into it?
Yeah. Yes, it's possible, and I'd like to just share one quick ditty about Christopher. So I want you to know I've had this direct thing with my son, who I started introducing myself and him on a certain level to nonviolent communication when he was 11. And, he's always made a point of not studying it or knowing it. But at this point, age 26, he actually feels that he absorbed some and he appreciates it. But taking it back to him being 14 years old, okay? So just a very quick story. So I had an agreement with him at that time. Maybe many of you know that teenagers often like to sleep late. To not talk to him or really at all before 12 noon, and to just give him his space, you see. And so I noticed that he wasn't in the house, and he wasn't in his room. Then all of a sudden, it's 12:30 on the clock in the p.m., and I'm noticing him in the kitchen. And I said, "Oh, Christopher, you're back." And he says, "Get out of my face." Well, I am totally shocked. And I hear what my mother would say if I had ever said that to her. "How dare you be so disrespectful to your mother? You know, you know, I can't even imagine this, or whatever, something of this." But instead, I took a breath, and because I was just learning this stuff, I was only 3 years into it, and I listened to the thoughts going by. How could I have such a disrespectful son? Could I just come back and take care and connect with him when he's 21, or any number of things. But I just listened to my chatter, and then I took time to imagine what he was needing. So I know I needed respect, and I was feeling pain. Then I took time to imagine him, and I imagined him that he needs space. So I said to him, well, Christopher, I'm imagining you're needing space right now. And he said, "Duh, of course. It's early in the morning. Remember our agreement?" And instead of arguing with him and saying, "Well, it's not early in the morning, it's 12:30. Do you see that clock?" Instead of doing that with him, I said, "Well, I'm going to give you some space, but I want to talk to you later because how you talked to me did not meet my need for respect." And I walked away. And so I went down to my computer, opened it up, feeling kind of sad. Didn't know how I'll make it through adolescence with this guy, and then all of a sudden, about 30 minutes later, I feel these arms come on either side of me from behind. And he says, "I'm sorry, Mom. I can be such an a-hole sometime." So what I observed is when I participated in ways that I had learned as a kid on how to respond to things, conflicts went for very long. When I had the discipline inside myself to practice nonviolent communication, even though he has not studied it at all, I noticed that things resolved actually within a half an hour consistently. And then I'm not in pain. I have more time for creativity, connection, he too. And so this was a short story, but it's very meaningful. And this is an answer about if other people aren't adopting it. So, thank you, Rich.
I mean, other people don't even need to have ever heard of it. It's just, you'll notice on the page that if you're still back on that first page, there's compassionate speaking or expressing, I think it says, and compassionate listening or receiving. And so the speaking would be in our role play if Lori had come up to me and said, "I'm noticing there's messes." She wouldn't say mess. There are piles of clothing here, here, and here. "I'm feeling uncomfortable or overwhelmed. I so value orderliness and cleanliness." That's the speaking of it. Compassionate listening, when she first came in, now we did the role play that we were both on each other's case in the first part of it. But had I been on my best NVC in our compassionate communication and listening, when she came in and says, "I can't believe this mess, it's a pigsty," I might have answered by listening and saying, "Oh, I'm wondering if you're feeling really upset right now or really angry because you would have really liked to come in and see a neater room." So instead of taking the bait or getting defensive, I just go, I understand where she's coming from, and I feed that back to her. That's the compassionate listening and then speaking back to her. So Lori, if she knew nothing about compassionate communication, just by responding that way, the listening, hearing, so what I'd really be doing as she did with herself is saying, "Oh, Lori's really upset. I can see she's really angry. What's going on? I'm guessing that she's really upset because," well, it's not a guess. She says she's upset because of the mess. I'm guessing her need for order and cooperation perhaps or support isn't being met. I can understand that. That's the connection. That's the understanding. That's actually when we talk about empathy, That's what the empathy is, guessing the other person's feelings and needs. Even if they're not clear what it is, it's helping them to get clear about it, and then coming from there. And that helps to diffuse and helps her. Does that help? So you had a question.
I'm looking for a little clarity on this needs. I believe you said that the purpose of the nonviolent or compassionate communication was to help each other get your needs met.
Understand the needs, that's how I see it, and see if there's a solution that can work for both of us.
It's not so much the purpose. It's not so much the purpose as what it is. It's about we all have needs, and when we're in conflict in challenging situations, if I'm in a challenging situation with you, it's because we each are having needs that aren't being met. So in using this process and using this, again, this way, actually many people, myself included, hold this as a spiritual practice, not just a communication technique. So as part of the practice of this is say, my need's not being met. I identify that. I really want to get my need met. And this person here, his needs obviously aren't being met either. I want to understand them and support him in getting his needs met. So that's part of the connection. That's coming to connection and understanding. It's not the purpose of it, but it makes sense. Okay.
So the idea is to acknowledge each other's needs and try to get some sort of resolution in the conflict and get the needs met. But short of a house being a mess, if anybody in this room who's been in a long-term relationship knows that there are issues that come up between couples. For instance, say over a career choice. One person gets a promotion, they want to move somewhere, and the other one has everything where they're living, and they have to, or a child being sick or dying or something like that, or a parent moving in with them. You're not going to come to a resolution where everybody is going to be happy with the outcome and get their needs met. It takes maybe some sacrifice. One person isn't going to like it, but they'll go along with it. So I found that you don't get your needs met. You figure out a way to live with them, but you don't get your needs met some of the time. It's naive to think that you're both going to get your needs met.
I'm in agreement with you, and I actually phrase it somewhat differently than Rich. I don't feel that I'm under any obligation to meet somebody else's needs. But what I want to do is to understand them and to understand my own, and then find a way that works for both of us. And no, I might not get my whole list, and they might not get their whole list, but the empathy we can create together the strategy that both of us can feel comfortable with or live with. So for me, that's very important to be aware that the solution is somewhere between us, that neither of us know when we start this journey towards, empathizing with each other. So.
I just want to accentuate, if I said it this way, I certainly want to change it. It's not about my meeting your needs or being sure your needs. It's about supporting you and saying your needs are as important to you as mine are to me, and how can we each find a way for us each to have our needs met. It's not about my meeting your needs. And there may be, as Lori said, there may be many needs as part of it. Maybe a need for harmony. Maybe as we look at it, what's more important for me right now is a need for this relationship to be harmonious rather than the need for me to take this job. And actually taking the job is a strategy. There's another need that's being met for that strategy. Taking a job is not a need. Security, financial security, career opportunities, maybe some of the, that kind of thing, it's like that might be the need that's being met. But the strategy of taking the job may be just a strategy that there's a different strategy to look at as well. Let's move on.
I wanted to
Go right ahead.
follow just one thing. I have been, I used to debate whether I was polyamorous or monogamous for a long time, and I was single dating, and some people would ask me for my position. When I got involved with nonviolent communication, I said, I'm neither polyamorous nor monogamous. I'm Lori Grace with needs and feelings, here to hear your needs and feelings and see what works the best for both of us. What form works the best. And that was such a relief to drop classifying myself or the other person. So
So actually, just before I do the last part, you were patient. You had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
What kind of advice do you have if you're trying to engage in this with someone and they're so repressed or so out of tune with themselves, they don't even know what their needs are, and they get extremely emotional and just kind of shut down when they even try to attempt to figure that out?
Part of it is keeping your heart open. Part of it is, as we were talking about, maybe empathizing with them and helping them, maybe to help them to discover what their needs are. Sometimes we really don't know ourselves, and empathy, as Lori, as when I was giving her empathy and I guessed something and she said, no, that's not it, that's fine. Empathy, you don't have to be right. It's like, okay, we both have information. Sometimes when somebody's been empathizing with me and they make a guess and I go, no, that's not it, it's like clarity for me that, oh, it's not that. So all I could say is, as a quick answer, is just to stay present, stay connected, and take some guesses and see if they're willing to be coached a little bit, or being not coached but engaged with as a discovery, to be curious what might be going on. So does that help? So we, just to complete the process here of the 4 steps as we're communicating, we have observations, we have feelings, we have needs. If Lori came in and expressed to me in our role play, I see the place is piles of clothing, I'm feeling upset, my need for order isn't being met, is the shorthand of that. If she just left it there, well, we really don't, what do you do with it? It's just she's expressed something, she said what she said, I heard what she heard. Do I go back to reading? What do we do with it? So we always want to follow up with a request. And what a request really is a strategy to help meet our needs. And there are a couple aspects or characteristics of a request. First and foremost, if I make a request of you, I'm willing to hear no. Otherwise, I'm making a demand. So that's foremost about a request. A request needs to be doable. So to say to somebody, would you agree to never, ever do this again? It's probably not a doable request. Or, there are others we sometimes ask people that are just out. So we want to make it doable. We want to make it sort of in the present as best we can. And again, not everybody likes this. You find your own way to ask it. For me, I really love the phrase, would you be willing to? I think it's lovely and easy, and it just opens up, would that be okay with you? Would you be willing? There are a couple kinds of requests, which we're not going to go into deeply right now. We have part of our handout is one kind, but the 2 particular kinds of requests are a connecting request, which is about, so if Lori said, would you be willing, her request of me, having told me what she said might be, would you be willing to tell me what you just heard me say? Or would you be willing to tell me how it feels to hear me say this? That's making a connection. An action request would have been, would you be willing to get up and straighten up the room? All right. Most of the time, depending on the situation, but 9 times out of 10, I really think it's lovely to begin with a connecting request, just to make sure you're understood, that you've been heard, that there's a connection there, and then you might follow up with an action request. Any questions about any of these 4 parts here? Let me say this also, that what I've discovered for myself, and if you're here with a partner, by the way, or you have a partner or a friend, a close friend, and you want to bring this back to them, I think it's wonderful to say, let's really do this and let's be formal. Let's go through it step by step, even though it may sound a little formal to say, I noticed this, I'm feeling this because my need for that would, make the request. It's a great way to practice it. And it helped me when I was first starting to actually have the list of feelings and needs. And sometimes I'd say, wait a minute. And I'd look at it and say, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm feeling. And this is my need. And it really helped me to identify it. And if you're with someone who has the space for that and you want to practice with, I think it's a great thing to do. However, what I've come to for myself is going through the 4-step model and process in my head before I speak to somebody. So I get a little clearer about what's my observation, what am I feeling, what need is met or not met, and what request I might want to make. And then I might speak it more colloquially or less formally. And the biggest criticism I've heard from people who learn a little bit about compassionate or nonviolent communication is that it seems so formal or so formulaic. Don't envy, see me, is what people have said. And it doesn't have to be like that. So again, come from the spirit of this rather than necessarily the formal process.
I just wanted to add one thing. I was very afraid to really come out with requests. I'd grown up in a household where I heard my father kind of give orders. He was a major executive, and this was his family, and we got orders also. But aside from that, what I learned with nonviolent communication is if I heard a no to a request, I was afraid generally to make requests because I was feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to be so angry if that person says no, or look at all the effort I took to make this request and you say no to me. This kind of energy inside myself. So sometimes I would never even ask. So what I did, which helped me so much and relieved my anxiety, was when I heard a no, I did, what are you needing that's making you say no to my request? All right? Are you needing, and then maybe I'd have to guess, like, are you needing some space and time? Are you needing to calm down?
And let me just say this. When she says, what are you needing? What she's
Or
really
wanting.
saying is what need is not being met, just for clarity.
Yeah,
so we're not
thank
talking
you.
strategy per se, is what need is not being met for you right now.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. And so I could feel connected with that person still. And I could understand what was going on with them. Or, I could say, well, what are you saying yes to right now? So anyway, that's in your little packet as well at the end.
So let's be transparent for a minute. I'd like to go into having them practice. We only have 40 minutes left, and some of that time is the raffle. And rather than go evaluations, mass grading, I'd like to give them a chance to write down for themselves. Does that work for you?
Well, all right. Okay. All right. It's all right. Yeah.
Okay. So what we'd like to give you...
Let me at least say something about
Sure.
the page.
Go ahead.
We were going to do an exercise, but we want to get you practicing the 4-step process. But if you look at, there's a page called Evaluations Masquerading as Feelings.
Actually, it's 2 pages back to back.
And the reason I put this in was because if you look on the left-hand side, those are things that people say. I feel abused, I feel betrayed, I feel misunderstood, I feel all this sort of thing that makes a person, it's not really a feeling. It's a perception of a condition. And what's much more valuable is how can I take that word and change it into feelings and needs? So you can look at this at your own time, but I wanted to make sure that when we go through the 4-step process, that if you find yourself saying, I feel attacked, misunderstood, unseen, abused, invisible, any number of things, you can look at these pages and translate them into feelings and needs.
I'll just say real quickly also, the other value in that is a lot of these terms when somebody says, I feel abandoned, or I feel abused, or I feel betrayed, Those are experiences we have where identifying ourselves as a victim. And so by also going, well, what's really going on? What are the feelings underneath it? What needs are not being met? It takes us out of that place of being victim and empowers us to really take a look at what can I do to shift my experience here. So that's part of the value for us. What we'd like to ask...
I just want to ask, is that page relatively clear when you look at it? Okay.
So what we'd like to ask you to do, if you'd be willing, and if you need a pen, we've got some pens up here, is you might want to go through that first page, and is there...
Right now, we'll give you some time.
We might go through that page and take a look at, is there communication? I'm sorry, if you don't have a handout, we're out of them. But what you can do this. Take one of those pages and use the back of it and just share with somebody, and you can use that to write down. And is there a communication you might have for somebody that you'd like to practice and use the 4-step model to write what would be the observation, what's the feeling, what's the need, and what might be your request? It could be something that's really intense, or what we'd really recommend is something that's not a really hard, painful, potentially painful conversation, but something maybe like, Lori coming and saying, the dishes are in the sink again. How might you communicate to somebody about that? And take maybe 3-5 minutes to fill that out for yourself, and then if some people are willing to share out loud, we'll do a little coaching. Okay, even if you're not fully finished, you can keep thinking about it or writing. Would anybody be willing to share your communication out loud, the 4 steps you just wrote, and maybe get a little coaching from myself or Lori? Sure. Come on up here, actually, and use a mic if you don't mind. That way everybody can hear you. And tell us your name.
My name is Gayatri. I actually didn't write it down.
That's fine, as long as you know what you want to say.
Okay, so I'm talking with my significant other.
Okay. Hold the mic right up to your...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've noticed that, and you've also told me that you don't want to talk about...
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Lori, I'm just, the comment, it was hard to hear both. Okay. I'm sorry, Gayatri.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I know that you've said that you don't want to talk about what's going on with me being laid off, and it being a burden on you financially. But I feel like that it would be helpful to be able to talk about these things, because I know you've told me it's very stressful for you, and it's also very stressful for me, and I'd really like to work on this together, also to make it easier on both of us.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there for a moment. Okay,
Sure.
That's great.
Okay.
So it's loving, it's soft, and but you were getting into a little bit of story, and actually some of your thinking about it. So you started out with, I know you said you didn't want to talk about what's going on with me being laid off.
Right.
That's pretty close an observation. You might say, I'm aware, I'm remembering. You've said you'd prefer not to talk about the situation we're in. Okay? That's an observation. You're speaking exactly what's heard. But then you said, excuse me if I don't get it exactly right, but I feel like it would be really important to talk about it. Okay? So that's not the feeling. That's the thought.
Okay.
The thought is, I think this would be really important, but what you really want to lead with is what are you... So actually what's interesting about this is it's really the need that we identify first. The need that is generated first, the need that's met or unmet. But we get in touch with that need by actually identifying our feelings. So that's what we speak it. But it's really, if I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling uncomfortable or whatever, it's because the need it began with the need not being met. But we notice it for ourselves by the feeling first. So we share that. So when your partner said, I don't want to talk about this situation we're in,
right.
What need is not met for you? And use your handout if it would be helpful to look at the list.
Okay. Now, what am I looking for?
The need that's not met. So I'm going to guess.
Okay.
There might be a need for support. a need for consideration?
Yes, and for me to be able to express myself,
So a need to be heard.
to be heard.
Okay.
Definitely.
Right, a need to
And
be heard.
To share what I'm going through.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, the strategy is,
Right.
you know, wanting to share what I'm going through. I mean, so I'm just being very picky
Okay,
now because
okay,
just for
right,
clarity about needs, but in terms of how you express it is fine. So, and then what feelings are up for you with that need of being heard and considered and supported not being met?
I feel abandoned.
No, you don't. Okay.
No?
So,
Okay,
this is
okay.
exactly what Lori said.
Okay.
You think I'm being abandoned,
Okay,
but
okay. I feel alone. No,
okay, feel lonely.
I feel lonely.
Uh-huh.
I feel scared.
Scared. Beautiful.
And disconnected. So how do I say that? Because I want to be connected. Because I'm going through this difficult time,
Right.
it'd be easier to feel the
Yeah,
connection
you
together.
long for connection.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
So that's lovely.
Okay.
So then the way you might then communicate is, I'm remembering you said you don't want to talk about this situation. I won't go into the
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And I notice that when I hear that or when I think about that, I get really scared. And I'm feeling a little lonely and not connected to you because I so would value your support
Okay.
and to be heard.
Okay.
Okay, so that's, you know,
That's great.
it's
feels good.
simple. It's not a lot of story there.
Right.
It's just lovingly saying, here's what's going on. So what might then be the request you would make?
Okay. Let's see. So, would it be okay for me to talk about what I'm feeling, about what I'm going through with you?
That's a reasonable request.
Okay. Okay.
My thought is it might be something more, given that I'm assuming I don't know if
Right.
this person has already said, I don't want to talk about it.
Right. Okay.
It might be, there's two choices. First, you
Okay.
could go with a connecting request, which would be, how's it feel to hear me say that? Or would you be willing to tell me? Or would you, or might even be, am I remembering correctly? Am I correct that you don't want to talk
Right.
about this?
Yeah.
So that would be a
He's
connect.
been very clear about that. So
Okay.
the other one is
So that's
would be-
clear.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make the action request, it might be something like, would you be willing to reconsider?
Okay.
Now that he's heard how important this is to you,
And then it would be from a different place of wanting to make that connection.
yeah. You know, I would,
think that would
you know, it
feel
would so
different.
help, and I so want to connect with you.
Yeah.
It's so important. Sometimes expressing what's known as the beauty of the need, not so much talking about the lack of not getting it,
Right.
but it might be something like, I so love it when we connect, when we really share on a deep level. And I'm missing that right now, and I'd so
Right.
love to have that.
Right.
Would you be willing to, so that might be
feels-
one way to go with it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
All right.
Yeah.
Can we have a round of applause for Gatry for taking a chance? Yeah, thank you. Any observations or any comments or? Yes.
As I saw in that example, I found that it was hard for me to express a feeling. I just had no connection to what I'm actually feeling. Through my example, I couldn't do it. All my symptoms were, I think. I didn't have any feels.
Did you have a chance to go to the feelings page and see if any words appealed to you?
Yeah, it was hard to connect to them.
Sometimes what helps is quieting down, breathing, checking on what's going on in my body right now. Oh, my stomach's a little tight, and what that might be connected to. Am I anxious? Or am I feeling scared? Or I'm noticing I'm a little jittery here. Or sometimes if you can connect in with your body first, that might help to connect with what's the emotion underlying that's generating a body sensation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just right now, I'm noticing you're gripping your hands, and touching them. And so you might even use that as a cue to try to tune in. Then, and what Rich said is noticing your breathing. Are you breathing very shallow? Are you breathing long, slow, and deep? Are you panting? You know, any number of things that.
And just quieting down sometimes. I know I'm speaking for me about me right now. Sometimes I need to just sit and just breathe and be quiet a little bit. And sometimes when I do that and tune into myself, the emotions I might be having arise, and I can name them. And it might happen just a little times, but the more you give yourself the space to do that, you train yourself to get in touch with the feelings that are happening. Yeah. And as Lori said, keep the list with you. It helped me anyway to like, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling, you know, and it helped. Yes.
Say for me, if I am aware of what I'm thinking, that can give me a clue about my need. What's well, those people are. It helps me sometimes if I'm don't know what I'm feeling or connect with the need. If I think of what I'm thinking, because I can live there, right? So whatever I'm thinking, that can be a clue to what the feelings or the needs are. I'm thinking, what's wrong? That person is so selfish. That could be a clue. Maybe, selfish. Maybe I want generosity and kindness. So I can just use it as a clue.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said that in my example where I was saying, how dare, the thought that ran through my head was, how dare you be so disrespectful to your mother? That was a thought, but it just helped me see my anger and discomfort. Okay.
Does anybody have one more? We might have time for one more if you'd like to practice out loud. Sure, come on up. Mm-hmm. And just let me say also with the intention to get us out at least close on time, we'll be laser with this. All right, Lori, would you?
Can we share one and both comment?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Deborah. When I hear you speak to me with sarcasm or anger, I feel sad, stupid, and not valued. I would like you to speak to me with a kinder approach because I'm wanting patience and empathy and a loving response.
So you said it kind of quickly. So when I would give an observation, I might use something other than sarcasm. I might say I'd say something specific instead. When I hear you say, "Oh, you don't have any problem with anger." I'd actually put what I literally heard, because that's like, general. Yeah, because someone else might say, I wasn't being sarcastic. What do you mean by that? You see, this kind of thing. Yeah. I feel sad. Now, the word stupid is a judgment. I feel sad, and not valued is also it's one of those.
It's actually a need that's not being met.
Yeah, and so, and the need that stimulates. But I feel sad because I really have such a longing to feel valued in our connection right now. And the request would be, and I would like you to speak with me with a kinder approach. What is a kinder approach?
Define it.
It might. Well, you didn't even have to define. I'd really like to. I'm really needing some warmth and caring and tenderness, and would you be willing? Would you be willing? Well, first of all, with somebody like that, I'd want to make sure that I got understood by them. So I would say, would you be willing to tell me what you hear about my feelings and my needs? So I'd first try to get a connection and be on the same page with that person. That's what I would do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Let me just nuance a quick one, and then we're going to move on. Let me just to remind myself. I loved what Lori said about being specific. When we say things like, be kinder, or you had here a loving response, that means that when we say things generally like that, we're assuming the other person knows exactly what we mean by kinder or loving. So as Lori said, the more specific you can be about the behavior you're looking for will more likely get you what you want. And the same with sarcasm. Now, what I do sometimes, which is not purely, but I might say, when you speak to me or when you say whatever, and I interpret that as sarcasm. All right. If that's the only way I think I can describe it and get there, and I've checked out, and I've done with a partner before. When what you're saying to me, I notice I'm thinking I'm being criticized. Are you criticizing me? And if you are, then we'll deal with that. And if you're not, then I'll let it go. And so can kind of check out that way. And then the last thing I want to say is the value of the connecting request, as Lori suggested. Would you be willing to tell me what you heard me say? There are many times. There have been times in my life, and I've seen in coaching others, where you might say, well, would you give a communication like this, which was basically a lovely communication. And so you say, would you tell me what you heard me say? Yeah, I heard you say you hate me, right? And we interpret, we make those filters. So that's why it's helpful to, oh, that's not at all. Thank you for telling me that. I wasn't communicating well. Let me say it again. Yeah, or differently, Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that. My son, as I said, was my master teacher. So if I said, would you be willing to tell me what you heard me say? He said, I'm not going to go parrot your words back at you. So what I learned from Marshall, which I so appreciated, is, and it worked with my son, was, I'm really wondering if I'm expressing myself clearly and I could really use your help. Would you be willing to tell me what you heard me say?
Or what has he understood me to say? You use your own words. Make it fresh for you. By the way, we didn't ask your name. What's your name? Deborah, thank you so much.
Right.
Can I have a round of applause for Deborah?
Yeah.
So before we move into, so everyone was given a coupon for a free class with us. Please note on there that we only accept 2 free seats per, in any one class. So we do encourage you, if you think you want to come, to call in advance and say, I want to use my free coupon. Is there a space available? And then once that's the case, most of our registration is on our website online, and just register, click pay at the door, and then you just come and bring your coupon, and we've got your spot for you. In a moment also, we're going to do the pick the raffle for this beautiful resort that Lori has in Hawaii.
I also want to talk about this.
Yeah, I was just going to.
Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, if you haven't gotten one of these pages, these are our classes up and coming, and fresh new different events and presentations and classes, and there's got such an enormous variety are being presented every month. It's also available on our website, but be sure to get one of these because you have a free class.
And actually a week from Monday, on May 5th, I think it is, whatever that Monday is, my colleague and one of our board members, Phil Wiltshire, and I are doing an NVC, or Compassionate Communication Practice Group. And would love to have you come and take this a little deeper for yourself, and just really, have an opportunity. There's always some new people there, so we'll probably go over the basics briefly again, but it's an opportunity to role play and get some coaching, and we'd love to have you there. And you can always check on our upcoming events at our website, which is sunrisecenter.org.
And I just want to add, just that when you look, you'll see things that are so varied, like toxic metals in you, or restoring our democracy, which is about creating a 28th Amendment to define that corporations are not people and money is not free speech. Oh, wow. Okay, so we actually have someone who's very active in this formation.
Actually, 2 different sessions, about a week, 2 weeks apart, on the same topic.
Yes. And so, this is a huge variety, and that's why we recommend you take this, because if you don't like one thing, you'll like another. There's even animal communication. So, All right.
And as we said, the third Friday of every month, we have someone come who's had a near-death experience, and as most of them will say to you, they don't hold it as a near-death experience, they hold it as an after-death experience. And I'm sure I know there are many people here at the expo who speak about that and have had that for themselves.
So shifting gears to this place, Haleakua Garden Farm on Maui. And it's also a certified organic farm and an eco-retreat center. You can buy food directly grown on the land, has a 60-foot swimming pool, solar heated, and several hot tubs, and everybody gets a farm tour. And if you haven't handed in your raffle, we're about to pull it right now. And so... And so I just I wanted to say that we're open all year, and everybody there is trained in nonviolent communication. And when I go there, both with the staff and the farming interns that we have, I feel so much joy there, and so appreciated. And you get to see this kind of communication system at work in a farm/retreat center. And we use no chemicals, pesticides.
Our friend Fred, who thank you so much for helping out today, handing out handouts and whatever. Parked the car for Lori so she could jump in here and be here on time. And all
Thank
that.
you, Fred.
And we're actually giving away 2 of these. And I believe we have at least, I can't remember, but it's at least a year that you can use it, and it's also transferable. If you don't want to use it yourself or can't, you're welcome to give it to somebody else. And by the way, whoever does get this before you leave, we want to get your name and number so that we can communicate to Haleakua so that they know you're official and like that.
And we have a certificate for you.
Okay, drum roll. So our first Haleakua lucky person is Heidi Kunin.
Fabulous.
Oh, you know what? We're going to keep that. We're going to give you the certificate. Okay. Yeah.
And it's for 2 people or more. For the free, yeah.
Yeah, actually, you don't need to. We'll have your contact information from this on.
Don't look.
I was just there myself for a conference in March. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and highly recommend it whether you win here or not, just to consider it if you're going to be vacationing in Maui. You're doing great. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. Rich Davidson. Whoa! No, I'm just kidding. Yohai Kakuda. There you go. It's Y-O-H-E-A. E-I. So, Laura, actually, just come up here with me for a moment. Yeah. So thank you all so much for being here, for your interest in speaking compassionately and connecting, and for wanting to find ways to build relationship. And we hope we'll see you again. That you'll